Hey guys, it's been a while. It's me again, the wrist guy. Welcome to this new video. Sorry that I kept you waiting.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Today I would like to talk to you about a very special watch of mine, the newest addition to my collection. This one, guys, that's a very cool one. Let's go. The watch that I have for you today is the Grand Seiko SLGH005. It is also called the White Birch. And I would suggest let's just start with the hard facts. As I already mentioned, this watch has the reference SLGH005. It is also called the White Birch. It is a full stainless steel watch. It features a full stainless steel bracelet and it is 40 millimeters in diameter. The design of the case is the new general design of Grand Seiko. The lug width is 22 millimeters. The bracelet unfortunately does not taper. The movement is very special. It features the 9SA5 movement. It is a brand new movement of Grand Seiko. It is fully in-house developed and manufactured. It beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour and has a brand new design. It has a precision of -3 to +5 seconds a day. The case is also 100 meters water resistant. The retail price of this watch is 9,500 euro. And I've always been a fan of the famous snowflake. You may know it. It's one of the most famous Grand Seikos out there. The one thing that I didn't like about the snowflake was the proportion. I felt like it was too big and the hands were just too thin and something was just off for me. This watch is, how can I say it, perfect. I really like basically everything about it. There are just 2 points that just, again, feel a bit off to me and not deserving of this type of watch, but we'll come to that. So let's start with the case. The case is the brand new design language of the brand. I believe they will continue to develop this kind of design and they will continue to launch watches with this design. I really like it because it is very much understated. You may know Grand Seiko from their famous Zaratsu polishing. It's their kind of polish where they polish the sides perfectly and you can even see your own reflections on the side. It's like a mirror finish. And sometimes it feels a bit too much. The watch becomes too blingy at times. And they just tone it down a bit for this one. As you can see, the case is indeed polished. It features Zaratsu polishing, but just on the bevels here. And on the sides, it is completely brushed. At the top, it is brushed. That's a detail I really like about this watch. This gives the watch a Royal Oak-ish feeling to it. I know it doesn't look like a Royal Oak at all, but just this kind of light play reminds me of the bezel of a Royal Oak because the Royal Oak too features a brushed bezel at the top and a polished bezel at the sides. And I really like that look. Speaking of the bezel, it almost doesn't exist. It is very slim, it is very toned down. I really like it because it makes the watch look a little bit more present. It makes the dial pop out a little bit more without being big. The watch does not look big on your wrist because usually watches with very small bezels look very big and this one certainly does not, and I really like that. The dial is the star of the show. It is inspired by the trees, they call it white birches, around the production facility of Grand Seiko. It is such a dramatic design, I really love it. It just looks like a tree bark. Usually I know the barks of those kind of trees are horizontally, I guess, and this one is vertically, but it gives the watch such a dramatic look. I have to say, once you get used to it, you kind of forget it. Every time I just bring it up in my head again, I just look at it and just be astonished, to be honest. If you compare it to the so-called predecessor, Snowflake, it looks like the Snowflake has a plain white dial, whereas the White Birch has a textured dial. In contrast, before the White Birch was even announced, the Snowflake had a textured dial, and this one just takes it up a notch. A stainless steel watch with a white dial just looks boring at times for me, and this watch does not. The hands are perfectly mirror polished. It is amazing when you see it in person. You don't really get to see it on camera. It's really hard to show it on camera, but the way the dial, the bezel and the hands play with light is just incredible. And it's not just the hands, it's also the markers and it's also the frame around the date window. It's extremely polished. You might have heard that too. It's just like watching 4K content for the very first time. It's amazing. And one thing that I noticed is, or a question that I had about this watch, is this small brushed line on the top of the hour hand. I always thought that it was loomed, but it is not loomed. It's just a design element, and it's so well thought out because the markers have this line too and the hour hand has this line too. So when the hour hand aligns perfectly with the hour marker, it is a very nice design element. The hands are almost too perfect. Let me tell you why. The hands are so perfectly polished that they are reflecting the dial, which is reflected on the inside crystal and then back on the hands, and you can see that. So the hands are looking dirty at times, but they're not. You're only seeing the dial on the top of the hands because it was reflected from the underside of the glass onto the hand. It is just amazing. It is very weird. It's just too perfect that it looks unperfect, and that just freaks me out a bit. A very nice pop of color is the second scent because it is a nicely royal blue. It is heat blued steel. It is very nice. It gives this watch a little bit of a more interesting character. It's just this little pop of color that makes all the difference in the world. And then the applied logo just wraps it up in a very nicely, extremely well polished package. So it is almost, yeah, it looks black at times, it looks silver at times, it looks white at times. It's just very interesting. Okay, enough of the dial. I think you may have noticed that I'm quite the fan of the dial. Now on to something I'm not a fan of, and that's the bracelet. This thing is awful. I hate this bracelet, and let me tell you why. Firstly, as Adrian from Bark & Jack already mentioned, it doesn't taper. I hate it when a bracelet does not taper. It's the same thing with the bracelet of the Omega Seamaster Diver 300. I think it looks cheap. I think it's uncomfortable. Did I mention that I hated it? And it looks poorly finished. It looks like an afterthought. It has no polishing at all on it. It's just a brushed surface. It has some kind of rigid lines on there. They look very weird, to be honest. I don't know. The polishing does not look apart. I think this bracelet is just not worthy of this watch, to be honest. But the weird thing that I find about this bracelet is it is indeed polished. It is finished, but you can't really see it. It's really weird because you do have a polished bevel. It reminds me of the bracelet of the Vacheron Constantin Overseas. Of course, it's not that greatly finished and the brushing does not match up at all, but it has a similar feeling to it because it is thick. The links are thick. The links on their own are quite well executed, but the bracelet as a whole just looks weird. And another thing that I don't like about this watch is that I believe it looks just wrong on a strap. It looks better on a bracelet, as Bark & Jack already pointed out as well. I believe this watch is a watch that should be worn on a bracelet, and unfortunately this bracelet is crap. Okay, on to the next part, the clasp. It's a basic Grand Seiko clasp. You have the logo embedded on front, you have double pushers, and that's basically it. You have no micro adjustment, you have no extraordinary finishing, you have almost nothing. And one thing that I really dislike about the clasp too is the finishing on the underside of the clasp. I don't know if you can see it here, but it reminds me of the cheaper Seiko models. So bracelet and clasp Seiko, that's a point that you have to step up your game. It is not at all on a level with Rolex, Omega, or even Tudor, to be honest. And now on a more positive note, the movement. This movement is beautiful. It's their newest in-house movement. It has more of a Swiss look to it, to be honest. The older ones did look Japanese. They lacked this whole beveling and this flamboyant decoration stuff, but this one does have it. And this movement looks quite Swiss to me, to be honest. It reminds me of an A. Lange & Söhne movement, to be honest. It's not that well finished, you have to admit that. but it is extremely nicely done. It is very, very thin, and the balance spins extremely fast. The balance wheel itself is designed very interestingly. This whole thing is designed very effectively and efficiently. So for example, Seiko uses a technology called, I believe, MIMS, where they just skeletonize certain parts so they weigh less and have less friction, and thus extend the power reserve of the watch. So this movement is freaking amazing, and that's the weirdest part of this watch. The dial is perfect, the hands are perfect. I believe the case itself is very, very good. The movement is extremely impressive, and then this crappy bracelet. I don't get it. The watch costs around 9,500 euros here in Europe. I believe it is quite expensive, but to be honest, I believe Grand Seiko can pull it off. I believe their quality can be compared to Rolex, Omega, Breitling, and so on and so forth. So I believe they should be priced higher. To be honest, I believe they were a little bit underpriced in the past, but I also believe that it was a little bit justified because the movement wasn't that nice. The movement looked like a Seiko movement. This one just, I don't know, raised the bar quite a bit for Grand Seiko themselves and for other brands to catch up, to be honest. And I believe it's better. You have a very nice style, very nice hands, very nice movement, and the bracelet, you can optimize the bracelet. So guys, that's been it about the Grand Seiko White Birch. Let me know in the comments what you think about the watch, and let me know in the comments what you think about this video. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. There will be coming new videos from now on. You can believe me. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay healthy and have a good one. Bye bye.